It's changed how I interact with my art. It's changed how I talk about my art. It's taught me different ways to position art through words and how I sell them in the emails, so that it doesn't feel like selling, because I'm only selling to someone if they're interested.
Well, hey there, Patrick. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
All right. Well, Patrick is one of my star artist incubator clients, and I really wanted to bring him on because he has such a great story. Some of it I know and some of it I don't know. So we're going to learn a lot about you today, Patrick. First of all, why don't you tell everybody where you are right now? And if have you always lived in, you haven't always lived where you are now, right?
No. So we live in Prince Edward Island, which is a teeny tiny little island in Canada on the east coast. And so we moved here in secret a year ago. A year ago, we were in isolation because we moved during COVID times. And it really was the reason we could move. I was working remotely because I have type 1 diabetes, and I was a teacher, and I didn't want to be a teacher anymore. And we knew we wanted to live out here on the East Coast, and specifically in Prince Edward Island. And so my wife was on mat leave, and so we loaded our 4 kids up into the car right after we sold the house for an inflated amount of money, thanks to the COVID market. And we headed out here to the East Coast. We had no family. We knew one couple who we had met on a beach during a trip. But there is a vibrant art scene, and art is deeply valued here. And so I knew this was the place to be. It always called to us. We visited on our honeymoon. We really wanted to be here. So after 8 years of dreaming, we figured we need to stop dreaming. We don't need to wait until we retire to go and do the things that we want to do. So we just did it. I continued to work remotely for the rest of the school year. And then we both resigned from our positions with that school board. And here we are. I'm now a working artist and stay at home, work from home dad. And
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up that you're a work from home dad, because, a lot of women listening, assume your wife might be the one doing it. I always used to say, I wish I had a wife. Yeah. And I always said that even when I was working full time, is like, I would see these husbands, like, where's my wife? Like, I want a wife.
My wife works full-time as a teacher. She actually works at our kids' school just down the road, and is fully 100% supportive of me doing the things that I want to do, because she knows that it makes me very happy, and it also facilitates my mental health. A few years back, I had a bit of a mental health, I don't know if I would call it a break, but I had pretty close to a nervous breakdown and was just spinning. And after a couple of years of therapy, and this is where the floral art really started to emerge, because before that I was just painting whatever. I didn't really understand why people needed a niche, and I sort of stumbled into my niche of these vibrant florals. And so all of that came about after a really difficult period with my mental health. And so my wife is an incredibly supportive partner and has always pushed me to keep doing it. I remember probably 10 years ago, I felt like I was really sucking at art. Like what I was actually producing was just kind of garbage. And looking back, it probably was.
Let me just cut in, because there's some key things that I want to make sure I understand, listeners understand. So you left a job as a teacher. What were you teaching? Were you teaching art? Were you teaching something else?
Sometimes I was teaching art. Of course, you can work art into teaching just about anything, but to really have that art period where, you're not hiding behind a math lesson trying to teach an art class.
Right. Like these are fractions, but really,
let's decorate them.
Right. There are 5 petals on this flower, and each one is a fifth.
Exactly. And, there's a place for that, but that wasn't, as an artist, that I felt like my skills were really being wasted. So I was teaching art outside of school privately, here and there for small groups, but I was not professionally teaching art as often as I wanted to. And it was one of the factors that really was pushing me away from wanting to be in the classroom. There were a million other factors, a lot of it mostly just systematic flaws and issues, and the fact that I just didn't really jive with it anymore. It was an idea that I had in my early 20s that I wanted to be a teacher. and I love teaching and I love so many components of teaching, but I was feeling like they weren't aligning with who I had become and who I was and where I wanted to go in my life. And I knew that when I came home at the end of the day, I was a grumpy dad and a grumpy partner. And no matter how often I would try to get into my little studio in the basement, it just, for me at that point, I was so drained from the day that I struggled to get there. And then the downward spiral of my
Yeah.
mental.
I mean, we have so many things, so many different directions we go, but I just we're going to back up even more. Are you trained as an artist? Did you
So
like go to art school?
I studied radio and television arts at Ryerson University in Toronto. And I am Canadian. I think your listeners probably have figured that out by now. And so I studied radio and television arts. I focused on production, which for me, it wasn't painting, it wasn't drawing, but what I really understood coming out of that training was composition, because that was what we were working on, how to set things up on a screen so that you could go from shot to shot to shot. I was sketching out basically they were like picture book dummies, but your thumbnails so that you could direct the different shots and the different segments. And so looking back on it now, I realize I had a ton of training, but I didn't attend art school.
But did you want to attend art school, or had you not discovered your inner artist at that point? So that's like an important question. Like if you chose the radio communications because you thought that was a better, more practical path, or you just didn't know you were meant to be an artist yet?
I think that I only started calling myself an artist partway into university when I picked up painting again. I had done it in high school, but everyone was in art class and you had to do it, and I loved it. I enjoyed doing it, but the idea of art school wasn't even in front of me. I grew up in a small town. Both of my parents worked, like my mom worked at Walmart, my dad worked at a factory. And so we didn't really talk about those things. We did art, we made art, but it wasn't like a job. Like I didn't really realize it was a job. And then as I moved to a bigger city and I started painting, I thought, oh, maybe I am an artist. I'm really loving this. I felt like I was finding myself. I felt like I was finding a voice. And so I had done art, but I never considered myself an artist. And I think the moment I realized that I could call myself an artist was when I set up my first classroom. It was a grade 5 class, and I had these paintings I had made, and I needed to decorate this really ugly portable classroom. It was all, beige and just terrible. And so I put the paintings up, and people came in and started asking, oh, do you do art classes for kids? I have a daughter who's 10, and she would really love some art classes, and we can't find anyone. Could you do that? So the next thing I knew, I was teaching art classes because I was trained as a teacher. So I feel like I kind of stumbled into it. I kind of fell into figuring out that this was what I wanted to be, how I wanted to identify myself, and who I really was. And there were ups and downs throughout the years where I would think, I'm not an artist. This art is terrible. Even when I look back at sketchbooks from a couple of years ago or a painting from a year ago, I think, oh, what was I thinking? But they're all little steps. They're all little movements. It's flexing your muscle. And thank goodness I carried on. My wife, she was my girlfriend at the time, and I were out for a walk one day, and I was really down on myself. And I said, I think I'm going to just be a writer. I'm not going to be an artist. My art is terrible, and I just can't do it, and it sucks. And she stopped us in the road, and she said, no, that's ridiculous. Stop. Just have your fit and move on, because you're an artist. You're not going to stop painting. You're not going to stop drawing. Just keep doing it. And she was right. So.
And then you said, will you marry me?
And then, yeah. And then,
right. Or you thought it in your head if you weren't ready to say it yet. You're not a self-taught painter, right? I mean,
I am.
Oh, you are completely? You haven't taken any classes from anyone?
I've never taken any classes.
I'm going to tell my podcast editor to cut this part out. No, I'm just kidding.
I started painting. I started using acrylic paint when I was about 12 years old because we were watching a lot of Bob Ross because he was on PBS at lunchtime.
Then Bob Ross taught you how to paint.
So I guess Bob Ross kind of taught me how to paint, and I just carried on from there, high school art classes. And then what really shifted things for me in the last 7 years since I had my since we had our first son. When we had our first kid, I had also enrolled in an illustration class, like how to illustrate picture books, and I was paired up with some critique partners. And so one of the critique partners and I really hit it off. We continued our relationship after the class, and she's trained in art. So I would get tons and tons of very specific focused feedback that she would send me, and I would provide her with feedback, but it was nowhere near the level that she was giving me. I really benefit from this relationship, and it's ongoing. We still, on a very regular basis, daily, most of the time, send each other work and provide feedback. And so getting that kind of in the moment feedback where I can tweak something and flip it, or just think about it and process it, I see it impact my illustrations for picture books, but I also see it massively impacting my floral work, which she never really gives much feedback on the painting. It's usually the illustration work, but they really do blend. So when you put them side by side, they don't look alike, but as I'm creating them, I can see the same, I'm using the same skills. I'm using the same shading techniques and to pull out texture and just the movement and the composition. I really believe that a lot of that comes from just the consistent regular practice that I've done, because I've been very disciplined. I've become very disciplined. The more children we've had, we have 4, the more children we've had, the more disciplined I've become, because I became terrified after our second was born that I would lose that part of me. I was sitting in a staff meeting one day, and I showed a teacher an illustration, and she said, "How do you have time for all this?" And I looked at her and I said, "Oh, I just make time. I get up at 5 a.m. And she went, "Oh, I could never do that." And then we carried on with her day. And I realized, oh my goodness, there are people out there who let go of their passions, and a very naive person. So I hadn't really realized it until we had that conversation. And so I didn't want to become that. I didn't want to become a jaded version of myself. I didn't want to exist solely in the universe of my children. My children mean more to me than anything, and they are number one priority. But in order for them to get the best out of me, I have to be putting time into me. And for me to do that, it means I get up at 5 a.m. or I stay up a little bit later, or I say, okay, you guys are having pizza tonight and watching a movie. I'm going to go down to the studio for half an hour, 45 minutes. And that's a trade-off that my wife and I do regularly.
Patrick, this is a hugely important piece that we're talking about right now. Could you walk through kind of what an ideal week or an ideal day schedule for you would look like? I mean, not the week where all of a sudden one of the kids has the flu and everything goes to shit. Not that week, but like a regular week, how you would manage your time as the dad who's taking the primary caretaking responsibilities and also monetizing your art. So it's the art making, the admin, and the daddy time. So how do you do that?
Yeah. So I actually just today, right before our call, I was just working on a new schedule. So I color coded what my schedule looked like.
I love that.
I have an incredible support system around me that allows for all of this to happen. So an ideal day for me, because our Monday to Fridays are quite similar, is that I get up at 5 a.m. and I get up at 5 a.m. to work, and our kids stay in bed until about 6:45. The older ones, they wake up, they have lamps in their room and they can read, and they just kind of do their thing when they wake up, but
they're perfect children.
Is that I get up at 5 a.m. and I get up at 5 a.m. to work, and our kids stay in bed until about 6:45. I was never, ever, ever a morning person. I'm still not a morning person, but I know that I work better on creative things in the morning because nothing else from the day has impacted me. I have pure focus on what I want to make. It's pure joy going in. It's pure focus. It's meditative for me. I can think about whatever. I can listen to a podcast. I can just, zone out and listen to some music while I create some art. And there are days where I'll do writing in that time as well, but I try to stick to that time to be passion project time, things that I'm really excited about. So those I save for my work blocks. So I'll work for an hour and a half approximately, and then I'll go upstairs and get ready. Kids ready for school. My wife is around, supporting there too. And she goes off to work. I get the kids on the bus. And then it's me and the 3-year-old and the 1-year-old. And basically the mornings are, time for us to hang out, play, go on I call them field trips. We go to the library, we go and run errands, and that's kind of where I sneak some time in as well. If I know I've got an order of prints coming in, they nap in the afternoon. I'm not driving an hour to town. Prince Edward Island is small and there's one city. So, you've got to drive to get there. And I'm not going to do that during their nap time. So we'll make a morning of it. We'll go to the coffee shop. We'll get a treat. We'll do a little bit of shopping. We'll go and buy some new art supplies. My kids are all artists, obviously. So, they always want watercolors and paper and notebooks. And I am more than happy to buy that and books for them. So, we make our mornings count. I steal time in that way, but it's always with the kids and they're involved. They're part of it. We do a lot of painting. We do a lot of messy play. And what I'm hoping is that as they get a little bit older, then I will be able to reclaim some of that time where they're working on their stuff and their art. Because the 3-year-old is very focused on his art and he'll work for 45 minutes on a piece of art or on several pieces of art, as 3-year-olds do. So once the 1-year-old is a little bit older, then I think I'll be able to reclaim some time to work and to do some of that painting. And I think it's incredibly important that they see me doing that, because they learn from it. They learn control. They learn skill. They learn follow through. My 7-year-old would be so frustrated when he was younger about drawing and that it wouldn't work right away. And I show him as I'm going through, oh, look, this didn't work. I'm going to paint over it. I'm going to draw over it. So just involving them in that for me has been extremely important. I want them to see me doing the things that I love. I don't intend to hide it from them.
Right.
So
at 3:00, the other two come home. But your wife does too. So
yeah. So okay. I mean, during nap time, they both nap at the same time. So that's my work time. That's when I sit and write my emails. That's when I go through orders and pack things. That's when if I have a commission I need to work on, or I have a piece that's just, I need more time on it. That's when I'm working on it. And I have certain days throughout the week blocked off where I'm working on my other job at that time, and then certain days where I'm working on my art business at that time. And then I also
time blocking is something we talk about inside the incubator.
Absolutely. And now I've also time blocked rest, which is new for me because I promote rest. My whole brand is sort of built on one print that I made a few years ago that's constantly my bestseller that says it's okay to rest. And it's a reminder to me because I never remember. And I use the excuse of, well, I love to paint and I need to paint, and that's restful for me. And it is. But I also need to just lay down sometimes and rest, or read a book and rest. So I've blocked in now time to rest. I'll report back on how that goes. So when the kids get home, I mean, it's family time. They're running around. I'm folding the laundry, I'm getting supper ready, or my wife's getting supper ready. We're doing lunches. We kind of trade off on jobs depending on the energy level of each other and how our days went. And because, a day at home with a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old can be really lovely and fun. And it can also be a reason that I'm bald. And similarly, my wife is teaching in a grade 4 classroom this year. Those days can be fun and exciting, and also, the reason she's pulling her hair out. So we do trade off.
And by the way, I'm completely gray. You don't know because I spend a lot of time coloring my hair, but I have a 21 and a 24-year-old, and it honestly, when my now 21-year-old hit 15, I was wishing for those toilet training days to come back, because 15-year-old boys are just, you wait.
Oh, I have 4 of them. So
it's like when they hit puberty, it's like 15 may not be the magic number, but it's like when they hit puberty, it's like, okay, what happened? Where did that cute little boy go? This like rebellious man-child who's discovered pot all of a sudden. Like, what do I do with him? You have the 90-minute block in the morning of art making.
Yep.
You have family time.
2 hours in the afternoon.
Family
as well,
time.
I some days use it for art making.
Okay. And then you have the school day is the morning part is incorporate the kids into the errands. Mm-hmm. Nap time is admin time.
That's right.
Then you have family time with dinner. And do you work after dinner too, or are you able to rest then?
So I work some nights. It depends on what I'm needing to do or what I'm forecasting I'll need to do. So I've been planning out by quarter. And then right now I'm planning out my big goals for next year. So it's basically, there are weeks on Prince Edward Island, it's a tourist area. And so there are parts of the spring and summer, and then right before the Christmas season starts, where all of the makers and all of the artisans and artists are busy putting things together, running to print shops, delivering things out to shops, trying to make sure everybody gets everything on time, and that so that the stores can have things ready to go. Correct seasons. Like I'm rushing out tomorrow is Friday, and there are 2 weekends left before Christmas. And so I really would prefer to do anything other than run a delivery out to a shop that is open for some kind of odd hours, but they want to carry some of my prints. So I'm going to bring it out to them, because that's what I do. That's what you do. You promote yourself and you follow through and you have integrity. That's how I believe a business runs. So it's important to me that even if I don't feel like doing it, I'm still going to do it. So there are weeks where I'm kind of running around, making sure things are done on time, and that's taking into evenings.
When you discovered me, you were part of that great resignation. The economists are calling it now the great resignation of 2021. And I was this is like, I sound like my husband now. I was predicting this. So, no, but I was, because like I quit my job in the wake of 9/11, and I knew that this was a similar time. And there's nothing like a crisis to lift a veil on, like, okay, what do I really want from my life? And 4 million people voluntarily left their jobs this year. I think it might be more. It might be 4 million in the US. I don't know what the Department of Labor comes up with these numbers, and I don't have the research in front of me, but they're calling it the Great Resignation for a reason. And you were part of that. So tell us what you were doing before you found me, because obviously you don't sign up for a program if everything's going great and wonderfully. So take us back to before you joined the Incubator, what your art business was like.
Well, it wasn't really. It was fledgling. It was basically me throwing arrows in the dark. It was me saying, I have an idea for this. I have an idea for that. I had a lot of ideas. I have notebook upon notebook upon notebook of ideas, and I didn't know how to implement them. And I was growing more and more frustrated. And when I found you, and well, I mean, I found you a while before, but when I purchased the Artist Incubator,
you invested in it.
When I invested in the Artist Incubator.
When you invested in yourself, right?
That's right. When I invested in myself via the Artist Incubator, I was lost. I just needed some kind of guidance. I needed something to give me either a structure or an idea of how to approach things, how to follow through with things, how to price things. I had no idea how to price things. I was pulling numbers out of thin air. I didn't know what to do, basically. I was selling art. I mean, I've sold little pieces of art here and there and some commissions. And for a while they were random. And then, nervous breakdown. Suddenly I'm making beautiful, joyful flowers, and people are resonating with them. And at that point, sales did start to increase, but it was unpredictable. I mean, nothing is ever entirely predictable when it sales, but it was going up and down, and I had no idea.
Pattern or rhythm to it yet.
Absolutely. So yeah. I just didn't know what to do. I knew I wanted to branch off into wholesale, because we had moved to this island with all these shops that, would take in cards and prints and arts and would display the original art. And as soon as we arrived, people started reaching out to me asking, oh, can we carry your stuff? Can we get your paintings in here? And I wanted to say yes so badly, and I had no idea how to do any of it. So I needed some systems, I needed some structure, and what the Artist Incubator did there was so much value to it, but I think more than anything else that I needed was weaved throughout the Artist Incubator program is the whole notion of your confidence as an artist and your ability to sell yourself. And I don't mean that in a smarmy way whatsoever, no. But now when I talk to people, I say, oh, I'm Patrick, I'm an artist. Yeah. I don't say, oh, and I have this other side job that pays for my consistent bills, or
it's not the other way around. It's not like and I don't know what your side job is, but it's not like I'm an accountant who paints on the side. You're now like, yeah. I'm a painter who accountants on the side or whatever that side job
Exactly.
is.
Now,
I don't
definitely
know what
not
it
an
is.
accountant, but no. So, and what's really nice actually is that job is, it allows me, so I'm a coach and content producer for writers who are learning to pitch their books. And what that allows me to do is really just continue to talk about the things that I already am passionate about and knowledgeable about. And so, it's not that big of a trade-off when I'm going into that mode for work time. But when I started really digging into the artist incubator, what changed for me was how I talked about myself, how I priced my art. And the strangest part of that is when I would look at the pricing of my art before, and it was too low and it wasn't moving. And then I increased the price for some reason, this whole psychological thing. The art looked so much better to me and I was so much more proud of it. I was so much more proud to say, yes, this piece of art is this much money. How would you like to pay for it? Rather than, can I give you, like, we can split payments, or, oh, I have something smaller, let me downsell you on this. Like, I don't downsell anymore. This is my art. This is what I make. Take it or leave it. If you love it, if you love what I offer, then that's fantastic. And I'm super happy to work with you. And if not, then that's fantastic too. And that's it. I mean,
Yeah.
you're not for everyone. So
Yeah.
coming to understand that. And I mean,
Nothing is for everyone. Like,
no, absolutely. And I wanted to be for everyone because I have always been a people pleaser, and leaving my job that was very safe and I made a lot of money every year and I had excellent benefits and an incredible retirement savings program. And I don't have that stuff now, but I'm very much on a clear path where I'm going to be, well, I am just fine. I'm perfectly comfortable and much happier. And I really do believe that all of that comes from the learning that I've taken out of this program, as well as the community that stems from it within
yeah.
the book group. And then outside of there, the connections that have been made with those people in that group.
Yeah. There's a lot of friendships that continue on even beyond the program. Like they write to me, they're still getting together. And I'm like, without me? It's like, you do that. No, I'm very happy about that. So one of the things that I wanted to make sure that you share, because I've seen this tremendous growth in the way you show up on your emails and in social media. And I know part of this is basically, the way I'm going to put it is that you have the confidence now to be vulnerable. So I don't know what you were like before, but I don't know you would have had the confidence to come talk to, by the way, thousands of people about your mental health, on a podcast. But all these things that you talk about, being, your feminine side as being, the caretaker, as the dad, your mental health, all these things that you talk about now as part of being an artist. I've seen tremendous growth in you. Would you like to say more about that, Patrick?
So what the confidence that's grown from this, and in just simply being able to say, hey, this is who I am, this is my art, which I was doing on a small scale, but I was not diving as deeply into it. And when I started to, because I was emailing more, because of the incubator program, I started emailing more regularly, as in weekly,
It was
and really
bothering
got
people.
over
You were
really
bothering
got over
people.
that idea that I was bothering everyone. And sure, people unsubscribe. And at first I was a little sad, but then that's my ego and I've moved forward. But people are unsubscribing if they're not the right people for me. And that's excellent because I don't really want those people on my list. The people who respond to me and tell me, thank you for showing up for us, word for word, I've received that email. This is so inspiring. You've really hit on something that I've been struggling with. Or the most vulnerable, deepest, most specific emails to my own experience and posts to my own experience have been the ones that have resonated the most with people, which has absolutely shocked me because I just assumed that everybody wants to hear about themselves and not about me, which is true, but I've learned how to write that in a way that I think they can see themselves in those positions, or they're seeing something that they want to see in themselves. And I can recognize that now looking back. I had no idea that's what I was doing when I was doing it. But when I show up to my social media or my email and I'm practicing those longer bouts of words that are, talking about my experience as a man who doesn't fit being a man, though I identify as a man, and going into an extremely popular and very busy downtown cafe and bistro and putting up an exhibit of paintings. Essentially, they're me. If I stand next to them, they're me with a flower beard and with a flower crown, and talking to people about what that means. I don't think I could have done that before, but I really don't. It's going to sound rude and like I'm a teenager, but I don't care. I don't really care what people think of that, because I know so much more deeply who I am and what matters to me, and I can speak to it. I have words for it, and I have words for it because I've written all those emails, I've written all those posts, and I'm a writer, so that's how I find my words. I don't start with those words. I started with the paintings. And so it all kind of circles and swims together and comes back into one. But essentially, having the confidence to first call myself an artist professionally has changed absolutely everything. Having the confidence to start emailing people, even when some of those people unsubscribe, has changed how I interact with my audience. It's changed how I interact with my art. It's changed how I talk about my art. It's taught me different ways to position art through words and how I sell them in the emails. It doesn't feel like selling, because I'm only selling to someone if they're interested. So
Yeah.
otherwise, I want them to be able to get a good story out of it, or to get some pleasure from just looking at a photo of it in my email. But I think that it all kind of circles back really to that confidence in a very deep way. I've always talked about confidence. I've read all the Brene Brown books. I've read, I've done all the soul searching. I've done tons and tons of soul and heart work through the years. And so when I jumped and left my safe career into this unknown territory, which has been, terrifying at times and exciting at times, and like, what did I do at times? It all just sort of opened things up so that I could take that confidence. And I don't think I would have. I think I'd still be kind of shooting arrows in the dark if I hadn't enrolled in the incubator program, because I needed something firm to dig into.
Now, I know this, but our listeners haven't heard you say this yet. All this confidence has translated into lots of sales for you at these higher prices. Am I right? Do you want to just let them hear it from you?
Yeah. So I've raised my prices. I've emailed people more often, and I have increased how often I'm painting, because the actual production and practice is so important. And that is all translated into money. And that money means that I can buy more supplies. I can buy better, levels in my email software. I can invest in myself. I can pay myself.
Yeah, we wanted to hear that too, right? It's not just, this is not about an expensive hobby.
No, it's not about an expensive hobby. It's been life-changing, because I look back at my earnings from last year and from the year before, and they doubled from last year. And I mean, I'm not ready to leave my side job, my little thing that helps me out sometimes, but I am very confident that in a couple of years of growth and learning, I will absolutely be 100% earning my income through my art.
You've been so inspiring today, Patrick. And if you've been inspired by what he had to say, go say hello to Patrick on Instagram. All right, Patrick, do you have any last words?
Yeah, I would love to encourage everybody who says they're not a morning person to try a week or 2 weeks where you set the coffee before you go to bed, you set an alarm, you either put your clothes out or you go to bed so you're ready to go, and then you jump out of bed in the morning when the alarm goes and just get your butt to the studio or to the table or to wherever it is that you need to go to do the thing that you want to do, so you can do it with an uninterrupted mind, because it's going to change your life. Changed mine.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being with me here today. I'll see you the same time, same place next week. Stay inspired.